Hey, welcome to the show. S.E. Cupp joins me today, my special guest. Very excited for you to listen to my conversation with her. Thank you very much to everybody who stopped by to hang out last night. It was much needed. I hope that you had a good time if you came by. And if you're not a stand-up subscriber, subscribe now. This show is commercial-free. It is fully supported by people like you. Sign up at patreon.com/Pete Dominic now. Yesterday, I read an email from a listener named Dave, and today I got emails all day about Dave's email. You missed that conversation if you missed the hangout, but keep your feedback coming. I really appreciate, no matter what you think about the work that I'm doing here. I always want to hear your ideas, your criticisms, what you like, what you don't. standupwithpete@gmail.com. I am going to do a news update for you today. I don't always do it on the Friday show, but I'm trying to each and every Friday that I can, because I promised this listener named Ryan that I would, because he said he liked it so much. So let's get to it. Let's get to the news. But don't forget, meet me in Las Vegas. John Carroll will be there, along with comedians J.L. Covan, Ophir Eisenberg, Christian Finnegan, and Garrett Sever is going to sing and dance for us and play as well. Very excited to have so many of you out there. Jared Yates Sexton is going to join us to do his podcast, and more still coming. So join us now. Go to PodJam. Well, look at the show links the links are in every day's show notes. All right, let's get to those headlines. What do we have for you today? Let's see. Yesterday was Crazy Town, because you obviously heard about Fonnie Willis walking into the courtroom in Georgia. That was pretty dramatic television yesterday. She took the stand as she fights to stay on the Trump criminal case. We'll have more on that. I'll play some sound for you. This was a huge story. An FBI informant whose allegations have been cited by congressional Republicans like James Comer was charged yesterday with lying about the supposed business dealings of President Joe Biden and his son Hunter Biden. This is a huge story. Special counsel David Weiss alleged that Alexander Smirnov, 43, told an FBI agent he spoke with, the owner of Ukrainian energy company Burisma, on whose board Hunter sat, about the company's desire to do business in the United States. David Weiss, the special counsel here, says that Smirnov told the FBI that Burisma executives admitted they appointed Hunter Biden to the board to protect them through his dad from all kinds of problems. Well, the defendant also told the FBI that the company paid $5 million apiece to Hunter Biden and his father, who was the vice president of the United States at the time. Guess what? This new indictment states that Smirnov's claims were untrue. He lied. He lied to the FBI. In truth and fact, the defendant had contact with executives from Burisma in 2017 after the end of the Obama administration. And after then, Ukrainian prosecutor general had been fired in February 2016. In other words, when Joe Biden had no ability to influence U.S. policy, and when the prosecutor general was no longer in office, it reads. This guy's claims have been touted as supposedly damning evidence by James Comer, as I said, by notably Senator Chuck Grassley, and now they have fallen apart and he's been indicted. What will Comer and Grassley come up with now? More lies, along with the rest of them. But that is huge, major news yesterday. And speaking of Trump's court trials, the judge presiding over his New York criminal trial Thursday denied his bid to dismiss the charges against him, ordered his trial to proceed as scheduled next month, March 25th. It is on. He said he expected the trial would last about 6 weeks. So big news there that probably gets undercovered, underreported. The latest on the shooting in Kansas City at the Super Bowl parade, officials are saying that they do not believe the motive was terrorism and that the shooting was the result apparently of a dispute between several people. But there was another shooting yesterday that I didn't even know about. 4 students were shot in the parking lot of an Atlanta high school on Wednesday afternoon, the police said, in the latest burst of gun violence on an American school campus. Also yesterday, back to Washington and the White House, President Biden on Wednesday shielded thousands of Palestinians in the United States from deportation for the next 18 months, using an obscure immigration authority as he faces mounting criticism over U.S. support for Israel in the Gaza war. I have a feeling that Donald Trump and his administration would not have shielded thousands of Palestinians. And how about this news? The United States, of course, continues to be number 1 on the list of the world's largest economies. Japan has lost its spot as the world's 3rd largest economy to Germany, as the Asian giant unexpectedly has slipped into recession. Let's see, what else do I have for you? Serious threats to U.S. federal judges have more than doubled over the past 3 years, part of a growing wave of politically driven violence, according to U.S. Marshal Service data reviewed by Reuters news agency. The U.S. Marshal Service is responsible for the protection of 2,700 federal judges, more than 30,000 federal prosecutors and other court personnel, and they've seen a sharp rise in threats related to the country's bitter political divisions, according to the U.S. Marshals director in an interview with Reuters. I thought that was a pretty important story I wanted to mention. And so is this one. Israel sent troops into southern Gaza's largest hospital yesterday, and what it said was a search for Hamas fighters and the bodies of hostages. The incursion raised alarm over the fate of hundreds of patients and medical workers there, as well as over the displaced Palestinians who have sought shelter at the hospital. The raid came 2 days after Israel's military ordered displaced people to evacuate the hospital, one of the last functioning in the enclave. Doctors Without Borders said that the shelling had left, quote, an undetermined number of people killed, and call on Israel to halt the operation. Let's go to Ukraine, where soldiers are withdrawing from some positions in the town of Advika after advancing Russian forces breached a critical supply line. In Greece, Greece became the first Orthodox Christian nation to legalize same-sex marriage. Big story. Wow, I'm surprised I didn't see that reported in more places. And in terrifying news, an Oregon resident was diagnosed with the plague. It's just called the plague? Really? We're still calling it that? Most likely passed along from a pet cat, a very rare occurrence. So don't get afraid. I just thought that was a weird one, and I wanted to mention it. All right, that's what I've got for you on today's headlines. Let's get to some of the sound that I've gathered. Let's start with a little recap from CNN. Jake Tapper talking to Justice correspondent Evan Perez about that news, that major headline news about the indictment of FBI informant Alexander Smirnov, who was the main source for the Republican case against Hunter Biden and some of the corruption that they've lied about him being involved with.
And just to remind folks who Smirnov is, because they might not know the name. Right. This was the individual that had claimed that he had been told by somebody who ran Burisma that Joe Biden himself was going to get $5 million for all these shady dealings. Right. This is the guy that Senator Chuck Grassley was insisting that this FBI report be revealed to the public. Correct. This was the guy who basically provided hours worth of content on Fox, especially in prime time. This was the guy who James Comer, the guy who runs the House Oversight Committee, was relying on as a major source of information. And the FBI is saying the guy's a liar. In fact, so much so we're charging him with a crime. Correct, Jake. I mean, look, again, what the Republicans are saying is that one of the reasons why they were relying on him is that they believed he was credible, that the FBI was using him as an informant, and that gave him credibility. What we're seeing, though, in these documents, in this indictment, is that all of that was fictitious. He came up with this story after Joe Biden became the presumptive candidate for the Democrats in 2020. And of course, after he had already gone to Republicans to make some of those allegations to Chuck Grassley and to others. Yeah, it reminds me to a degree of during the Brett Kavanaugh hearings when all these people were making wild allegations, false allegations about the man that is now Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, and then there was this move to just release all this information. Well, allegations are not facts, and just because somebody's reported something to the FBI doesn't mean it's true. And we saw all this wild stuff released about Brett Kavanaugh, who was unfairly smeared by a lot of this. Here we have apparently the same situation, except it's against Joe Biden. Right, exactly. And by the way, I mean, people come to the FBI all the time, make allegations. The FBI puts it down in these documents called the 1023, and that's what Republicans then release to the public. Yeah, that seems, in retrospect, wildly irresponsible just to release 1023s without any sort of context as to how credible an individual might be. And now we know the FBI thinks this guy's not credible at all. Right. Made it all up. All right. Evan Pettis, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Made it all up. I'm not sure I am fully agreeing with Jake Tapper's point about Brett Kavanaugh because some of those allegations bore out. Some of them were not followed up on. But nonetheless, it's true. The point still remains. So there you go. That's some, I think, good analysis on what happened with what should have been the biggest story yesterday, if not for Fani Willis walking into the courtroom and testifying on her own behalf yesterday. So just a little bit more on that. Here is former AG Elliot Williams, also on CNN, former federal prosecutor, on what this means.
At issue here is this key allegation The business person one and public official one. Business person one, Hunter Biden, public official one, Joe Biden. This idea, which we now find out is a lie, that specifically they were paid $5 million each. And we've heard that trumpeted over and over again by House Republicans. Turns out it's a lie. So what does that do to impeachment efforts now?
Oh, I think it eviscerates an impeachment effort. And any evidence linking current President Biden to wrongdoing was pretty thin to begin with. But if people had it and could come forward with it and substantiate it, by all means bring it. That's how law enforcement works. The simple fact here is that not only was this the basis for impeachment, but a lot of people relied on it and were out giving speeches and statements about it, and it really all just falls apart. Now, I'm genuinely curious, sort of as a citizen, as much as a former Hill staffer and prosecutor, what the folks on the Hill do with it now, because literally your star witness, his testimony has been completely discredited by law enforcement.
Yeah. Allegedly a lie, to be clear, in the
lie.
face of the law. But when it comes to being evidence that you would hang your hat on,
absolutely.
If you're a member of Congress, this is not it. Lying to the FBI, creating false records.
Star witness. Their star witness. This is such a big story. And we'll see what happens with it. Let's get to the other big story. Yesterday was Fani Willis, the Fulton County, Georgia district attorney, prosecuting Donald Trump and 19 others on RICO charges. And of course, let's remember what this is all about. Trump asking on tape the Georgia Secretary of State to find votes for him. It's, of course, devolved into this spectacle of a hearing. Doesn't change the fact that Trump is going to have to still be defeated at the ballot box. But this hearing yesterday was wild. I can't even follow fully what's happening here or how to interpret it. I just loved Fani Willis standing up there, sitting there, and every line seemed to be from like a movie. I mean, this was probably my favorite one, though, when she was talking about the prosecutor she's being asked about having an inappropriate relationship with.
So let's just talk about what you did in preparation for today. Did you meet with Mr. Wade at all? Once the motion was filed, did you meet with Mr. Wade and talk to him about the motion that I filed to disqualify you?
On this first January motion?
Yes.
I don't know if you could say talked about. I probably had some choice words about some of the things that you said that were dishonest within this motion. So I don't know that it was a conversation. As you know, Mr. Wade is a Southern gentleman. Me, not so much.
Okay, but my question was, did you have a conversation with him?
I didn't have a substantive conversation.
Mr. Wade is a Southern gentleman. Me, not so much. I mean, that was pretty much, that was one of my favorite moments there yesterday. I don't have time to go through all of them, but I highly recommend you catch up on that because it's a pretty big deal, pretty important stuff. And I'll have more for you tomorrow and the next day and the day after that, most likely, if we're all still here, that is. All right, trigger alert. I'm about to play the voice of one Tucker Carlson, who, while visiting a Russian grocery store, says he's radicalized against our leaders because Russians have it so much better than Americans.
Corruption. If you take people's standard of living and you tank it through filth and crime and inflation, and they literally can't buy the groceries they want, at that point, maybe it matters less what you say or whether you're a good person or a bad person. You're wrecking people's lives in their country, and that's what our leaders have done to us. And coming to a Russian grocery store, the heart of evil, and seeing what things cost and how people live, it will radicalize you against our leaders. That's how I feel anyway, radicalized. We're not making any of this up, by the way, at all.
Wow. How about it? A lot of reactions to that yesterday. Tucker Carlson doing everything he can to try to make Americans believe that authoritarian rule is just so much better and that Russian grocery stores are so much. American grocery stores are amazing. What is he even talking about? If you don't like Russian grocery stores in Russia, they throw you in prison. But aside from that, have you seen the selection of breakfast cereal? Says JoJo from Jers. Does Tucker Carlson know that there's no First or Second Amendments in Russia? It just seems like Republicans love Russia more than America right now. I sometimes feel that way. And more fact checks. Tucker is, quote, legitimately angry and radicalized because he says the groceries in this Russian store are a quarter as expensive as in the U.S. But median household income in Russia is 1/9 of what it is in the U.S., meaning Russians are paying far more of their income on groceries. When he's in America, Tucker Carlson says that free speech is the main right that you have. Without it, you have others. But while he's in Russia, he says democracy is a joke and journalists are rotting in jail. He says, oh, the grocery store floors glisten like ice crystals upon Swan Lake, says Derek Thompson. All right, well, I just got to play this for you. This is from a House hearing yesterday where Congressman Garcia of California went after Marjorie Taylor Greene, displaying one of her vaccine misinformation tweets. And then he went to his expert witness to debunk it. And it's pretty dramatic what happens here because the doctor apologizes on Marjorie Taylor Greene's behalf to the parents who had died from COVID, says that the fact that they didn't get vaccinated is so important. So I wanted to share this one with you.
Countless posts has spread misinformation, encouraged parents to refuse routine vaccinations for their children, which you just heard, by the way, and even compared our pandemic efforts responses to the Holocaust. I want to just actually read something which is in the public record. I'm not saying anything that's not in the public record. That a member of this committee actually said, the same person that is actually attacking vaccines, said that vaccinated employees get a vaccination logo, just like the Nazis forced Jewish people to wear a gold star. I want to read that again. Vaccinated employees get a vaccination logo, just like the Nazis forced Jewish people to wear a gold star. That is the level of insanity and attacks that we're having here as we actually debate the lives saved around vaccinations. Now, this same member has also held shadow public hearings promoting ideas that COVID is a bioweapon to target people of specific races and that vaccines, and I quote, cause turbocancers. I want to read you this quote, and it's again in the public record at a hearing. Have the COVID vaccines resulted in an increase in cancers, and are turbocancers real? Now, Mr. Chairman, this is, in my opinion, just insanity. We know that's not the case. Dr. Marks, can you clarify once again for the American people, do the COVID vaccines cause turbocancers?
I'm a oncologist that's board certified. I don't know what a turbocancer is. It was a term that was used first in a paper in mouse experiments describing an inflammatory response. We have not detected any increase in cancers with the COVID-19 vaccines.
Thank you, and I thank you for correcting the record.
May I just add something here? I do need to apologize to the 1,000 or so parents of children who are under 4 years of age who have died of COVID-19 who were unvaccinated because there were deaths and are continuing to be deaths in children, and that is the reason why they need to get vaccinated. Thank you.
I agree with you.
All right. Well, so do I. There you go. That's what I've got for you. That's the news, everybody. Well, wait, let's get some laughs, huh? Let's check in with the voice of America. Again, Stephen Colbert, The Late Show on CBS, joking about Valentine's Day, etc.
This Valentine's Day, nearly half of U.S. adult population is unmarried. Half. Which means, statistically speaking, there's a 50% chance that if you're married, your spouse is not. Ask. Always ask. With this increase in singles, reports show that self-gifting is on the rise. Now remember, the Catholic Church is against that too. What I don't. So, really? Okay. That's a stroker. What I don't understand is what's the difference between self-gifting and just buying things? This year I'm gifting myself an oil change and a pack of gum. God, I'm such a terrible gift giver. I have to break up with me, but I can't do it on Valentine's Day. It's not just singles celebrating themselves, because this Valentine's Day, polyamory is getting more attention. Mostly from that one couple who keeps saying, did we tell you we're polyamorous now? Because we are, and it's totally cool with both of us, right? Honey? She's cool with it.
All right, there you go, Stephen Colbert. I hope you liked it and are laughing along with me. I also hope that you like my conversation with S.E. Cupp, because that is coming up right now. You know her from all the networks, from Fox News, and she was on MSNBC, and now she's been at CNN for several years. She's also a daily news columnist and the author of Losing Our Religion, the liberal media's attack on Christianity. She wrote that book a real long time ago, actually, at this point. But she's become a very good friend of mine over the past few years, a regular guest here on the show, and I love talking to her, and today was no exception. We talked first a little bit about her fashion and why She doesn't care about what anybody thinks about how she dresses on social media or on TV. She does it for herself, which I loved. She talked a little bit about aging as a woman and the conversation around that. And then, of course, we got into all the politics. I hope you'll follow her on all the social media. She's huge on Instagram and Twitter. And I'm very happy to have her back on the show. Let's do it right now with S.E. Cupp. We're on. There she is. It's been way too long, but I'm so happy. There they are, the glasses. How many do you have now?
You don't want to know.
No, I feel like I've seen a drawer. I feel like you've been public. I feel like you've publicly displayed your glasses.
I have a case that I've mounted onto the wall. I don't know how many are in there. Oh, well, it's 12 times 4.
Okay, so let me just ask you this. Another superficial question about you. I also follow you on Instagram, and I see a lot of your posts. You seem to be able to code switch with fashion, hair, glasses, and clothes. And I wonder, like, how many people are you? Are you always the same person? You have so much fun with it, and I'm always decide who I think you are in every one of them.
That's really funny. I do have fun with it. And, you know, a lot of the times when I'm getting up at 4 a.m, if I'm not like looking forward to a fun outfit when I go to sleep at 7 p.m. the night before, like that's when I put my outfits together. I have to, or else I'd have to get up even extra early. If I'm not having fun with it, man, it's rough to get up at 4 a.m. to go into the city to do hits. So yeah. And it makes me feel kind of like a superhero. When I give that much thought, I put thought into it. I really like what I'm wearing, and I'm off to work, super productive at 4 a.m. with this armor of an outfit on that I feel fun in, you know, like it really sets me up for a good day. And when I don't, because there are times I can't, right? I just like, you get called to do a hit and then I have to put something on. It's just less fun. And I don't feel as impervious.
I never see those days. Maybe you don't.
I wear it like armor.
Maybe you don't share those days, but the thing is, most people go to work if they're around a lot of people. I remember when I used to have a job, and I would go into SiriusXM or other places, and I would have an outfit. It wouldn't be too crazy. I never took a lot of risks. I would be this guy, you know, most of the time. Yeah. Sometimes I'd tuck my shirt in, but then you know you do that, and then you go on television. Most of the times you're at work, and so you're communicating in a way, you know, to the audience. And I wonder, I mean, I don't think you really overthink that at all.
It's not for them. I don't ever think about the audience. If I did, I mean, I wouldn't get out of bed because they either want to see me in something racy or they really don't. And they'll tell you that. Like, I can't think about what they want me to look like. I'm a woman in my 40s. Everything's changing for me constantly. And I'm just trying to keep up with me and not lose myself in all of these changes. So I don't think about the audience. I think about what I want to look like and how I want to feel that day. And I really do have fun with it. I have fun with fashion, like architecturally. It's not a status thing for me. You know, I was an art history major. I love the artistry of
I can tell.
Color and fabric and all of that. So that's what I'm doing. But it is for me and me alone. It's not even for my husband. I've never cared whether my husband said you look great or he said nothing, because he wouldn't ever say anything else. But I don't care. It's literally just for me alone.
Has he ever made a joke like you look like a corporate sailor in that outfit? Or I mean, because I have a lot of jokes about plenty of your outfits. I feel like you look like the spokesman for a lot of products. I don't know what they are, but those are usually where I want to go. Like, are you selling me some kind of body spray? To be more serious, though, I think it's interesting. I have had several times, especially when the girls were at a certain age, where I would make comments about what they were wearing or even like the way they got their nails done. And they had to say more than a few times to me, Dad, I'm not doing this for you or for anybody. I do it for me. That it still is hard for me to understand that you're not wearing a clothes, you're not presenting for the audience, for another person, for people you work with, as opposed to I like this. But I think you've explained it really well, and I'm glad that I've learned that lesson from my daughters and other people. It's not just women.
Yeah, I would give them the benefit of the doubt, and I think that's hard to do when you have young girls and you're a dad. And my dad was similarly critical of my clothing, mostly because I dressed like a hobo in when I was a teenager, he always
I
thought
saw
I
a
looked
picture of you when you were a teen, and you had a stick with a satchel on the end of it.
Yeah. No, like in the fashion where I was living at the time in Boston was like
in
these
a
long
boxcar, apparently.
Well, no, it was like, long peasant skirts, plaid flannels, like kind of hobo stuff. Anyway, and like Doc Martens or Birkenstocks. Yeah. So he was critical too. But I think as a woman grows into herself, we start dressing for maybe other women, not men at all. And ultimately, the freedom comes when you are literally only dressing for yourself. And if your girls have found that early, man, did they save a lot of time wasted on insecurity and sort of performative dressing, which I did in my 20s for sure. And then, you get on TV, which I did in my 20s. And then you've got another layer of sort of insecurity about it. But when you start dressing just for yourself, it's completely liberating. Yeah, that's exactly what I've seen from them. Within their friend groups, they're the nonconformist fashion sense. And so their friends say, tell them they're weird. I mean, if you wear anything outside the norm of sweatshirts or leggings or, whatever they wear, it's like you're weird. But my daughter's got all kinds of cool original jewelry and obviously clothes. And their friends look at them like, you're trying too hard or something. And they'll always explain, as you just explained, I love this. It's from me. They love to go thrifting and putting their outfits together. They get a lot out of it. And I didn't know anything about that because I never cared about those things, up to a certain point. I mean, no matter what I wore, I always wore clothes in hopes to impress specific girls. And they always were really good friends to me. And they always friend zoned me. Every time. I literally picked these socks for this girl. And she's like, didn't notice. And she dated all my friends. Enough about me. Let's talk. I want to ask you, you brought something else up real quick. I'm fascinated about this. You said I'm 40, whatever. I'm going through changes. I assume you're talking about physiological, your body, your skin, your hair, everything. And so these women, I was talking to a couple of listeners. They know who they are. When they came to a show once and we were hanging out, having drinks and talking. And one of them brought up changes in their body. And they said to me, you should have more conversations about women and menopause and life changes and body changes because women don't talk about it. And I was like, I'm not going to host that, but that's not for me. But I was surprised to hear that. So my question to you is, do you not talk with your lady friends who are either older than you, especially, or your age about this stuff a lot or a little, or is that not a thing that you're talking about with your... I'm not in menopause, but I'm just coming into, some of the changes and maybe it's perimenopause or the thing that happens before menopause, whatever it is, but I'm just coming into it. And so I hadn't heard anything about it or what's supposed to happen. That's weird to me. That's weird to me. I find that weird. It is weird. And then when I was on the phone with a friend who I talk to really regularly, I've known her since high school, and she brought up a specific change. I won't tell you what it is. Specific change. And I said, is that what that is? And she said, yeah, I went to, so-and-so doctor, and this is what it is. It's part of perimenopause or whatever it is, whatever this age is. And I said, that's exactly what's happening to me too. And it was such a relief to know there wasn't anything wrong and this is normal. And even when your body's changing in ways you don't like during pregnancy, maybe the comfort in knowing it's normal is it's so gratifying to know, oh, my body's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Even if I hate it, my body's working. And so I've embraced the changes as, oh, good. My body is working. It's doing what it's supposed to do. I am aging correctly. And then I work on, skincare and other ways to look youthful and feel youthful. But no, I wish we talked about it more. And I was so grateful that she brought it up. And we have that close relationship where she can bring up something that might be embarrassing or, something you just don't talk about in big groups. You just don't. Yeah. Well, I hope that there's got to be a lot of different conversations now, podcasts and things around this. I was just surprised to hear, and it sounds like you're confirming that to a certain extent, but and people should know I'm looking at SE on video. She has a tail now. That's what I was talking about. You didn't know. When I talked to my friend, she was like, I have a tail now. And I was like, oh my God, me too. Is that what this is? Like a lion? How you just... I didn't want to say, but that's what it is. We grow tails.
I thought I saw it on your last CNN appearance. I was like, what is that? SE or?
I pin it back usually.
Let's talk about politics and what's happening, your latest columns at the Daily News. I always appreciate you talking about those other things as well, by the way, and I'm very thankful and grateful with your transparency and honesty as much as you can be. But on politics, on what's happening, let's get to, I guess, the big story in your latest piece at the Daily News, which is about the special election. Is it Swazi, the guy? That's how you say his name, who won?
Yeah, Swazi.
In New York. The title of this piece at the Daily News, what does Swazi's win mean? Not what you think. What are your takeaways in this piece, and what should we all be looking at here with this win? George Santos' seat.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, people look to this because it's the first election, of the year, and people want it to be a bellwether. And I think there are some things to glean, but this is also very specific. It's a special election in New York. Tom Swazi held the seat for 3 consecutive terms. He's basically an incumbent. And his challenger, Mazi Pilip, was very unknown. He outspent her. I mean, a lot of these things, Biden won his district by 9 points in 2020. A lot of things would say, of course, he was going to win. And so this isn't really newsworthy. But there is some newsworthy stuff to come out of it, I think, for Democrats, if they want to hear it.
I don't want to hear it.
The way, I'm sure you don't. No, it's not, because it's not great for Democrats, actually. But you'd say, just looking at the face of it, well, great news for Democrats. Tom Swazi, a Democrat, won. Despite immigration, despite crime, despite the economy, he won. Great. Good news for Democrats. Actually, when you pierce the layers of his campaign, and if you followed it closely like I did, you notice he didn't actually run on a lot of those things. He ran against his party in many cases. He liked to point out that he was a centrist, that he disagreed with his party a lot, and that his party had gotten things wrong. He was a very brave Democrat, I think, to say immigration's a huge problem. It's not made up. It's not a right-wing invention. It's a big problem. The economy is not great. People are not feeling like the economy is great. Crime is real. Republicans aren't inventing that. Crime in this city is real, and we should be dealing with that. I think that was refreshing for voters, that even if his own party owned some of the mistakes, admitting that they were problems is something most politicians on both sides don't do. Republicans won't, talk about abortion in ways that sound normal to most people. They won't talk about guns being a problem, right? Like, it's not a problem. We don't have a problem with mass shootings. Of course we do. I think he won because he acknowledged Biden's getting old. Our party has a bad brand here. We've got to fix some of these problems. I think that is exactly what people wanted to hear. And so not great news for Biden, because he ran kind of against him. But if you want to win as a Democrat with a very unpopular president, that's how you do it.
So one of the things about this, I didn't pay that close attention to the campaign, but like any Democrat now, if you run, certainly at the local, much less the state or national level, you get painted as an extremist. And he got lumped in with, I think, the Squad. I think I heard him joking about that in his acceptance speech. And they, gave him, pejorative nicknames on, I can't remember any of them, on immigration and so on. And I don't know how I think it's always effective when you try to connect one person to somebody else's views that they might not share, because it's hard, but it doesn't, I don't know. Did that work? Does it work if the guy is got a proven record? He's been there forever. Do you think then the way they painted him as an extremist, or I don't think the Squad are extremists. I don't use that kind of hyperbolic language at all. But do you think that it worked to paint him as being, ideologically similar as them?
No, and it didn't work because of what you just said. He has a very long record, and he had just come off an election where he was running for governor against Kathy Hochul, and he painted her. He ran to the right of Kathy Hochul. He had painted her as soft on crime, and he was going to be tough on crime. So he had very fresh examples of his rhetoric and the policies he wanted to pursue, not even going all the way back to his 3 terms as a congressman, but to the last race for governor. So it really didn't. He was able to combat that kind of crazy painting, broad brush painting of him really well. Someone without that that proven and like very recent record might have a more difficult time differentiating themselves from, this quote unquote extremist wing of the party. But he did not. He's long been a centrist and had a very, I think, easy time, pointing that out.
When it comes to the issue of immigration, the migrant crisis, and how that plays out in these campaigns, I certainly think it matters more in districts and in states where people are actually seeing these migrants. And I don't know how you necessarily identify them, but people are hearing about the policies. They're hearing about the numbers in these cities that weren't necessarily, that they're shipping them in from Texas and Florida and all of that. Obviously, that animates people. I'm not sure how much the immigration issue or the migrant crisis animates people where they aren't seeing it as much, but it connects to your next piece or your second most recent piece of the Daily News. The GOP is collapsing. So too could the country. But specifically when it comes to that issue of immigration, how much do you think the failure to pass these tough border security, at least that's how I'll position, hear your description of the legislation, they killed their own policies. How does that play out in campaigns? Because, your colleagues at CNN, two of your colleagues, Anna Bash and I forget who else, said they talked to GOP voters who said that the GOP can't govern and they killed that immigration issue and that made them want to not vote for these people. And I was pretty shocked at that. What are your thoughts? What are you hearing?
Listen, I think most voters were with Republicans that when it came to the border, the Democrats have bad policies, and they do. And I was just talking to a Democratic operative who I won't name, who said to me off camera, when it comes to the border, Biden has bad facts, and it's really hard to message around bad facts because the policies are bad. And you can disagree, but I think most voters were with Republicans. The policies are bad, and Democrats need to fix it because you had Democratic mayors and governors begging Biden to do more. When Republicans then decided not to take a package full of stuff they had never gotten before and couldn't have even dreamed of getting, I think that completely flipped. And people said, okay, you're taking us for a ride. And now you want us to believe that it's still the Democrats when you had an opportunity to fix it. And people are smart. I think they'll still say, look, these are bad policies. But when you had the chance to fix it, you didn't. Now you're playing politics, and politics solves no problems. Policies solve problems. Right. Trying to impeach Alejandro Mayorkas is a political performance. It's not a policy solution to a broken immigration system. So in order to appease Trump, Republicans want to play politics. Democrats are offering policies. It's a very asymmetrical operation that's happening in Congress right now. And people are frustrated by that.
I've covered the political aspect of the immigration fight for as long, when President Obama was president, even before, I don't cover it, but I read a lot about it during the Bush administration and that fight, the compassionate conservative, remember that whole idea, of course. But when I feel that there's too much blame on the Biden administration and certainly on Democrats because of what you said with its policy. There's just so much that a mayor, much less a governor, can do. The borders are federal. They're controlled federally. And what you need is policy. You need legislation to be passed. And every time Republicans put it up, they don't either vote for it or they kill it because they, as a lot of people say, they want it to be a problem to run it. They don't actually want to solve the issue.
And I've said this for years, too, having covered this for a long time, certainly before Trump Republicans, that it was politically profitable for both sides to leave this problem broken, because then you can run off of it. You can fundraise off of it. You can fearmonger off of it. Listen, sanctuary cities are not a policy solution to a broken immigration system. That's a political solution. And we're seeing sort of the evidence of that not really working, right? What Governors Abbott and DeSantis are doing in shipping migrants to sanctuary cities, that's a political performance to a political solution. Again, we're not getting good policies, and you can locate blame on both sides. But when it comes to this specific migrant crisis, Biden came in and immediately undid the Remain in Mexico policy because he thought it was, among the many things Trump did on the border, he thought it was inhumane. And there was a lot of what Trump did was inhumane. The Remain in Mexico part was probably pretty smart. And he didn't have a solution or the resources at the border to deal with what happened when you didn't make migrants remain in Mexico while their cases were adjudicated here in the United States. He had nothing set up to accommodate this wave of migrants who heard, oh, I don't have to stay in Mexico anymore. I can get in and then they'll figure it out. So listen, there's blame to go around. But if you're looking at today, where we are right now today, Republicans are the ones standing in the way of getting immigration reform. Period.
I've always thought that was the case simply because when they passed it out of the Senate with all those Republican senators in 2013, John Boehner wouldn't take it up for a vote because he was worried it would pass then. It's the same thing we're dealing with now.
There's a lot of that.
I feel like that's always.
And don't give the other team a W. Don't give the other team an opportunity to fix something.
Do you think, let me ask you about another question just about the president. Do you think Joe Biden is old?
Yeah.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Why do you think that? Is it because you have eyes?
It's because I can see and hear. Don't forget the hearing part too,
and the
Pete.
Ears?
It's the seeing and the hearing. Yeah, look, and I don't know why there's an embarrassment around this or like a denial of this. He is old. He will be closer to 90 than 80 at the end of his second term. That is old. I mean, my dad's old too. My dad's, lost a step. I love my dad. My dad's a great guy. I don't want him to run the country.
My dad is going to be 80 this year, and I do want him to run the country badly.
If he could, great. Great.
Oh,
I don't think my dad should.
Oh, no, he can't. I just definitely want him to give it a shot. I'm all for it. I'm endorsing Chuck Dominick. I know
everyone should at least get to see their dad run the country once for a day.
Thank you for seeing Chuck and his ambitions. I fully agree with you. I mean, like, if you know an 80-year-old, it's hard to imagine them doing, like, running around the country. Like, campaigning is a lot harder than governing.
And you trust Joe Biden's institutional knowledge is so deep, right? He's not learning anything for the first time. There's no on-the-job training. He's done this all. So that is some, encouragement. But at the same time, this job is a lot harder than it used to be. We're in a number of wars right now. I mean, there's a lot going on, multiple crises. And that would be hard for anyone, let alone someone who is clearly, lost a step cognitively and physically.
Do you have any, I mean, it's hard. I feel like I don't want to talk about the presidential campaign that much ever when it's still this far out, even though it's underway officially, the primaries are underway, but it just seems like, nothing's going to change. But just one question, just your thoughts on Nikki Haley as a candidate, the fact that she's still in there. What's your relationship with her, by the way? You must know her.
I do. And I talk to her and the campaign frequently because I like this campaign. She's not a perfect candidate for me, but who is anymore? But I certainly want to stop Trump. And conventional wisdom would look at New Hampshire, Iowa, and say, well, Trump is he's got it, right? Sure. She can't win any of these states. He's got it. I think this election is a little different, in fact. I think if you look at the numbers, 49% of Republicans in MAGA Iowa chose someone other than Donald Trump. 40% of Republicans in New Hampshire chose someone other than Donald Trump. That person happened to be Nikki Haley. I think sticking around as a viable Trump alternative, even if she's not beating him, has value. There are buyers for her candidacy, for her kind of campaign. As long as there are buyers, and I mean donors, but also voters, and they're demanding an alternative to Trump, I think she should stay in. I don't think she has to rack up wins immediately. I think she has to make a convincing case, and she certainly has to move in an upward trajectory, that she could beat Trump when, let's say, he goes to jail. When, let's say, something happens, that she could just be the last man or woman standing might be the play here. So all the people say she should get out. He's got it. He doesn't. The Republican Party, the only way to describe it is divided. That is the only accurate way to describe a party, 40% of which is voting for someone else. It is divided. So, I mean, I see it differently than I think most people are talking about it. I see it differently. Maybe that's because I want to. But also, I can see the differences in this kind of very specific election with all of these weird factors.
I don't know much, but she's got to be thinking, you probably know if she's thinking that if she has the money, which I think she does, why on earth would you stop? Because of what you just said, anything can happen. He's close to 82 and he is in all kinds of legal trouble. And so, why not ride it all the way to the convention? But the other question is, and maybe this is conventional wisdom, from what I've read and I think it seems pretty true, if she were the nominee, she'd have a far better chance of beating Democrat than Donald Trump. Isn't that what it
suggests? That in hypothetical matchups, she beats
Biden. If you really want to win.
By many points. No, they don't want to win. That's where you misread the Republican Party, Pete. Well, they don't want to win.
That's why a lot of people voted. Certainly a lot of black folks in South Carolina and others voted for Joe Biden because they thought he would be the one who could win. It was a pragmatic vote. He's most likely to probably win in this country at this time.
Right.
And they were right.
And they were right.
But the Republican electorate and primary voters aren't looking at it that way.
No.
Because they are.
No, I mean, it's the allegiance to Trump is the most important thing. If you just look at the shenanigans over at the RNC right now, right? They're kicking out Ronna McDaniel, who I didn't love, but listen, she was the head of the Michigan State GOP. She knew what she was doing. She could do this job. I think if Trump hadn't been around, she would have done it well. But now they're thinking of installing his daughter-in-law, Lara Trump, who has no experience. And you know what she's promising? To spend every penny to get Trump elected. You know, every other Republican down ballot thought, Jesus, like what? So you're not going to spend money on my election now?
Yeah, I made that assumption.
Of Trump.
I've never run the RNC, but which may surprise some listeners. But I made that assumption that running the RNC is a huge part of that is you are sending money to different campaigns up and down the ballot around the country based on
getting Republicans elected. That's the job.
Getting Republicans elected more than you can. Yeah, so that was a weird statement. And as you said, Republicans heard that going, what about?
She doesn't know anything. And they literally, all they're seeing is how the party relates to Trump. The party exists now only in service of Trump. It doesn't exist to, push conservative policies and principles. It doesn't exist to get other Republicans not named Trump elected. It doesn't exist to win legislatively. It doesn't exist for any of that anymore. It's just in service of Trump. And so, the frustration of other Republicans, I get, but also you built this. You built this. You enabled this infrastructure to exist and grow. So now you're going to live with the consequences, one of which is losing. It's going to be losing a lot.
One of the things that's always been the case for a long time is that Republicans hate the government. And so they talk about so many Republicans saying we can't get anything done. Actual congressman, Thomas Massey, I think you wrote about, and others in your piece, saying, we never should have gotten rid of Kevin McCarthy. How are we better now? We're not getting anything done. This Congress is getting less done than any other Congress, I think. But I would say a lot of Republicans want that to be the case. They want the gears to be ground and halt. They don't want government to get things done. I think that's a ridiculous way of looking at government and at politics and at what your role is as a representative in Congress. But I do think a lot of people support not getting anything done just on its face. Am I too cynical?
No, you're right about today. The idea of limited government has merits, and it's a check on big government. And that check is important for government spending and largesse, for corruption. It's important for representation and making sure that, every voter is feeling represented and not, the cities aren't overpowering the rural communities and vice versa. So limited government as a principle has merit. It's become a fetish, and not because I don't think it has anything to do with Republicans not liking government. They don't want to solve problems because they want to be famous, and they go to Congress to be famous now. They're not there to legislate. No one's there to govern. They're not there to solve problems. They're there for Trump and to become celebrities. I think it's more that than like a deep-seated, principled hatred of government. Right. I wish actually what you were saying were the case. I don't think that's what it is.
I want to spend our last 3 minutes before you have to go on television talking about Taylor Swift. Where are you on the Pentagon psychological op? I know you wrote about it, but I was surprised to see that you believe it.
Yeah, obviously I don't, and I think it's ridiculous. And I wrote about it It's funny. I had just come off writing. I'm not a Taylor Swift fan. I don't dislike her, but she doesn't write music for me, right? She writes music for little girls.
You don't like her music. You've never liked her music?
It's not for me. That's not the music. It's not for me.
Me neither. I can't name any of her songs. I'm more of a Katy Perry.
Okay. She's not there for me, which is fine. I think she's great for little girls and obviously very hardworking and talented, all the things. But I never planned to write about Taylor Swift. And then the deep fakes came out. And I felt compelled to write about the deep fakes because that happened to me.
Yeah, I didn't read this piece, but can you just explain real quick what that means? Like they mock up graphically a picture of a woman, in this case, nude. It's not you, but it's
in a sexualized position. They did that. AI did it for Taylor, and they put her in a very sexualized position surrounded by Kansas City Chiefs players. And it was grotesque. And when I saw that, I remembered how I felt when it happened to me. Larry Flint did it in Hustler
in the
using
magazine.
Photoshop.
In the magazine, they photoshopped a picture of you into the magazine.
Yes, we didn't have AI, so it was photoshopped, and the whole spread said, "What would S.E. Cupp look like with a dick in her mouth?"
Oh,
and so they put that there. It was very graphic, and the accompanying paragraph was like, S.E.'s hot and smart, but we hate her position on these issues, and that makes me want to put a dick in her mouth. And
that's
at the time, this was devastating and gross, and you felt, as a woman, you felt like you'd actually done it. You felt dirty, even though you didn't do this.
Eesh.
But that's the effect these images have. And so I wanted to kind of explain that. And there's new legislation that's being brought up in the House right now to address deepfakes. So I talked to my congressman, and I wrote this piece, and I'm trying to get that legislation passed because I knew how that felt. So anyway, this is a way of saying this is why I wrote about Taylor Swift the first time, never expecting to. And then immediately after, it was discovered she's a psyop. And so then I had to write about her again, just kind of in defense of this poor girl. It's not poor by any means. She's doing fine, and probably laughs at all of this, which is what she should do. But, it was such a week for her between the deep fakes and then she's a psyop meant to destroy America because she's in this relationship. I felt like I needed to.
Is there anything that can be done to regulate the AI?
They're trying to make it a crime to put women, real people, because it's not, the harm is not to people like me and Taylor Swift. And she is obviously way more famous than I am. But as public people, you believe it less when you see it.
Yeah.
If you're just a normal person, like you think you see Taylor Swift, you're like, that's definitely not her, right? You benefit from being a public person. No one believed that was actually me, the conservative, whatever. No one believed that. When you're just a normal girl in a high school in New Jersey and someone does this and then circulates it amongst your school and puts it up on social media, it's harder for them to not believe it's you. Your parents believe it's you. Your friends believe it's you because it looks so real. And maybe you did do this and you don't have the resources to forensically go and prove it's not real. So the legislation would make this illegal, would make it a liability issue, meaning you could sue a person who did this to you. And, that's a layer of protection I think this needs.
Tough to navigate. It was hard for them to Photoshop your tail. That's how we knew it wasn't you, too.
They didn't get the tail. I didn't have it there. I've only grown that in perimenopause, Pete.
Right. This is a long time ago. I didn't know that happened. It's terrible, but I really appreciate, obviously, you talking about it in the Daily News and with me. And as always, great to talk to you. Thank you very much, my friend, for doing this today. And go be on TV now.
Okay, thanks.
All right, there you go. What did you think? I hope you liked it. Please go let SE know that you did on Instagram or Twitter. And I am very grateful that you joined me today, you bumblebees here at the end. Thank you very much for hanging out with me at the Hangout as well last night. If you were there, that was really fun. A lot of great talks about Fonnie Willis. We heard from a whole bunch of folks that I really loved hearing about that. It's always great when we are together on Thursday nights. As always, appreciate your support. If you haven't subscribed to the show, what are you doing? Patreon.com/PeteDominic. Write a review of the show on Spotify and iTunes or wherever you listen to it and tell your friends. Have a great weekend. I plan to post on Saturday, but in case I don't, I'll talk to you Monday. Love you guys. Bye-bye.
So long, you got the creaky knees, you got to stand up. Stand up. I think you're driving wheels with leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. We got to open up the window to let in some light. You gotta stand up. That's right. We got to rise up. You got to stand up. You gotta stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. Don't get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. This is the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of a stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. Alright, we got to speak up, we got to reach up, and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up, stand up. Got to stand up. Ooh, come on, just stand up. Everybody got to stand up in the darkest hour. Stand up. People got the power. Stand up. Come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on.